Thanks for tuning in to this tactical intellectual scouting report. Today we're going to cover Zionistic Agitprop and sentiment that is born from said Agitprop. And also, the definition of Agitprop is it's agitation and propaganda. It's basically propaganda in many forms, art, literature, etc. But let's start with the latest example, and that's that Julianna Margulies character right here. So let's look at what she has to say. So these clips that I will play is from the Back Room with Andy Ostroy on Apple Podcasts. So here we go.
Well, you mentioned, we talked before about the Holocaust education program. It is about education, with 7,000 kids know nothing about the Holocaust, right?
In 2021, I really saw that Trump had left this horrific hole when he legitimized anti-Semitism by saying there are good people on both sides after the Charlottesville March, which is why I started the Holocaust education program to begin with, because I truly do believe, and I'm seeing it clearly now, that education is the most important part of a child's life. It plants the seeds. It stops the ridiculousness of...
Hey, speaking of education, let's add context and perspective to this discussion here. She only gives one side, and that's from her side right there. But when you talk about atrocities that happen and Holocaust and everything, just think about the hidden Holocaust of that Belgium had towards Congo under Leopold II. I think, was it 10 million died? Also, let's talk about the first genocide to begin the 20th century. The Herero and Namaqua genocide. Shark Island, they had concentration camps too, 1905 to 1907. And, the death toll was kind of small compared to her genocide or her Holocaust. But the Germans killed between 1,032 and 3,000 people in Southwest Africa. So, let's add context and perspective to these things right here. Before you start trying to beat people over the head with your trauma, your historical trauma of your group.
It's if anything like this had happened in the Black community, for example, 900 protesters left stranded on the tarmac in DC on their way to the rally because all the bus drivers walked out. If that had happened to any other marginalized community, this country would be in an uproar. But because it happened to the Jews, for some reason, it's laughable. And there's just such a strange story woven into anti-Semites, I should say, because I'm the first person to march in Black Lives Matter. When that happened to George Floyd, I put a black screen on my Instagram. I ran to support my Black brothers and sisters.
Okay, so I'm not gonna get too deep into her logical fallacies that she employed, but one thing I want to do, I want to give an analogy right here. In soccer or football, if you're international, there's something called a dummy play where, it's kind of like misdirection, get your attention to your right while the real action is being carried out on your left, or vice versa. So that's what she's doing. She's acting as the dummy quote. She's acting as the dummy play right here. So it's got dual meaning, but let's just say she's the dummy play, and here's the definition of it right here. So let's proceed.
I am the first person to jump up when something is wrong, as I think most Jews are, because we have been persecuted from the beginning of time. Not just in World War II, but literally from the beginning of time, when we first lived in Israel. way before anybody else. And so I guess what's happening to the crazy people out there who are getting their news from TikTok.
That's really not true right there. I mean, you guys are not the first to jump up and run to someone else's aid like that. Hey, should we address the elephant in the room? I mean, when you first lived in Israel, I mean, you guys are, you know what? I'm not even gonna address that part. That's an argument for another day right there. So let's move on.
Humanity. Where's the humanity? Before one bomb was dropped on October 7th, before one bomb was dropped in retaliation for a brutal, barbaric attack, people were already on their bullhorn saying the Jews deserved it. What? Where's your humanity?
The thing you said before, like for some reason, I mean, let's get into that. The reason, to me, the reason is people hate Jews. They've
Why?
always...
Why? That's what I want to know. Why?
My theory is throughout history, Jews have always been industrious. They've been successful, resourceful, accomplished, and that threatens a lot of people. Like if you're not those things, you just become the subject of scapegoating and the source of other people's poverty, or the source of other, doesn't mean Jews control this, Jews control that. It's all
But it's
those
all
same.
bullshit.
Of course, it's bullshit, but it works. It's worked through the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, the Russian pogroms. Hitler ran to, he ran with it, and so I think it's just what it is. And you're 100% right. If
So we can all see what is clearly going on right here. Claim that people hate you because of your religion. Thing is, we really don't know what your religion is when we see you. And then even then, once you make your religion known, we really don't hate you still. It's the baggage that comes with all of that, man. And to be honest, it's that baggage that makes people draw away from you. They don't draw to you to harm you. They draw away from you. They're apathetic. They just leave you alone or deal with you at arm's length. So there's a lot of delusional claims going on with what this guy is saying here. But it's a reason, because they want to pin something on you. So
Because I thought when all this started unraveling, I thought you better learn that which you want to talk about.
mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I have no right to talk about it. So I spent a Friday by myself after October 7th, and I watched the documentary called The Green Prince, which is based on the book Son of Hamas,
Mm-hmm.
Mossab Hassan Youssef.
well, she really don't mean that, because she speaks on topics that she's unfamiliar with, and her talking points are just faulty, to say the least. But let's proceed.
Even
That's
when
the
presented
thing.
with the facts, no one wants to accept
presented
it.
with the facts, and I'm really disappointed in the New York Times. I'm really disappointed with the BBC. The way they are reporting it's careless. And the perfect example is the rocket
Mhm.
that immediately everyone blamed Israel for bombing a hospital. It wasn't Israel.
Mhm.
It was Hamas's own. Actually, it was Hezbollah. And it went off and it backfired. And by the way, immediately in 30 minutes, you've counted 6,000 bodies. Hamas owns the media. Hamas puts out what they want the world to believe. They have a very good PR machine,
Yeah,
because
the ministry. It's like when the ministry puts out
yes.
data. It's like it's Hamas. It's a
but
terrorist
no one's
organization.
believing it because they don't want to. Because why? The Jews.
They hate
That's why.
the Jews.
So we see that her ability to call a spade and not circle around or dance around the issue that she sees is alive and well. So, we give her that courtesy, and it's very reasonable for her to feel that way. But in return, when her group of people are kicking up dust and talking a bunch of trash and acting crazy, we have that right too to call that out. And one thing to remember is a person's religion does not absolve them of critique when their group is, I guess, acting crazy towards other people. So let's move on.
Still believe it. And our democracy is so at stake right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we love about living in this country, about moving around freely, is going to be completely overturned if we go down this path and allow this. Congress must unite.
So there's a resolution out there that will conflate or equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And I mean, it's being discussed right now. So you link that up with that 894 bill, the same bill where they condemn and denounce quote unquote anti-Semitism or any perceived anti-Semitism in the US or abroad. It's definitely a slippery slope, and you can see how they can cherry pick any perceived anti-Semitism, and yeah, it's really bad because they're being allowed to conflate. And you know, we already know conflating is just when you erroneously, you know, combine two or more pieces of information or any idea or opinions into one thing. So, you know, that automatically kind of make you into the hypocrite. And this lady here and this guy that's hosting, I mean, and the Zionistic people anyway, they practice one thing, but then their actions prove that they're doing the opposite of, or they believe in the opposite, or only when it suits them. But I mean, it's crazy, man. This is it's a terrible thing. So anyway, let's move on and just see what else she has to say right here.
It's not it's not a mystery what their motivation and their sole reason for existing is. It's to annihilate the Jews, the Israelis, and wipe Israel off the map from the river to the sea, which is another thing that can drive you nuts, is that the kids who are spewing that have no idea what that means. You know?
Right.
That's like
They
saying,
have no idea what that means.
that's like what it would be the equivalent of holding signs saying there must be a final solution in the Middle East. Like, wait, time out.
Okay.
Like, do you know what the final solution means historically? Like, they just adopt these bumper stickers, and I don't know whether kids today think it's cool or there's a bandwagon or whatever, but it is some dangerous shit that's being put out there.
It's 2023, and I look over my shoulder walking my dog.
Yeah, and look, you have people at the airport in Russia, you have students in colleges. Jews are being hunted down. And this is why when you see Jewish kids ripping down the hostage posters and Jewish kids sing Free Palestine from the river to the sea, it's like, wait, what? Do your parents know this shit? That they're paying an awful lot of money for this, you know?
Okay, so you see, we have another example of this conflation right here. This guy just took from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. He took that and he's equating it or conflating it. That is anti-Semitic, means genocide and everything. I mean, it's open for interpretation. It depends on the person. You can't just ban a slogan because you feel. I mean, it means you got people that call for peace and they use that. So I mean, come on now, let's move on.
My industry, and I love what I do. Of course, all the Jews are going to speak up. It's the non-Jews that need to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
And it really brings me back to the Holocaust and how our ancestors must have felt when their friends suddenly were like, "Sorry, can't come over anymore."
Yeah. When has anyone ever spoken out in support of the Jews? The United States in World War II sent boatloads of Jews back to Europe.
Yes.
I mean, when has anyone ever spoken up for the Jews in history?
It is
Never.
because Jews, they rally around everybody.
Right. It's such a complicated situation.
A lonely place to be.
It is a lonely place to be, and I'm not. I was going to say it's a scary place to be, but I find myself not really being scared. I'm more just livid. Like history,
Yeah.
It's like we've learned nothing. Some people have learned nothing from history.
Ironically enough, the two people that you hear talking, they haven't learned anything from history, because if they have went over history, they would know that people have indeed spoken up for you guys. You ever heard of Walter White? I mean, he helped get you Zionist people recognition when, people were against you. Then you have Ralph Bunche. He was a mediator during the Arab-Israeli conflict. So it's crazy because Israel was getting dragged by the Arabs over there, and he's the one who mediated peace talks between Israel and the Arabs right there. So I mean, to say that nobody ever spoke up for you guys is crazy, man. So that's another tactic you guys got to watch out for. These people, they start off with that Nazi Holocaust, woe is me, to butter you guys up, because they figure that people don't know. Then they just start talking trash. They start talking trash on other people. And it's crazy because, like I say, we have to put things into perspective and have the correct context of things. When you say if somebody had a flesh wound from a 380 or a 22 in their shoulder or something, and then you have another person who got shot up by a 357 all on the lower half and they're bleeding profusely, that person, who do you think should have the treatment first, medical treatment first? It's the person that's bleeding, from their 357 or 50 BMG. That person that got that 22 long rifle flesh wound can actually relax and not try to demand medical treatment over this person who's bleeding profusely or is bleeding out and about to die. So I say that to say this, man. Don't try to beat us over the head with your trauma, with your historical wrongdoings, especially, add context, use discernment when you try to do that, man, because you're talking to a group that's been through more than what you've been through. So don't try that over here, So let's proceed to the next clip.
Now, it wouldn't shock me a bit if a month from now you see students on Columbia's campus or Cornell or wherever, just somehow finding that lane that to them makes Hitler the good guy and somehow America in the 1940s the bad guy.
But also okay, let's talk about Hitler for a minute. Did you see U.S.
That's a great name for a show, by the way, like a one-man show. Let's talk about Hitler.
Talk about it. Did you see U.S. and the Holocaust, the Ken Burns documentary? Everyone should watch it. It should be mandatory watching,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the Black community, if I may, because Hitler got his entire playbook from the Jim Crow South.
Mm-hmm.
The Nazis were watching how the Jim Crow South were treating slaves and said, oh, great call. Let's do that playbook. That's what we'll do to the Jews. Which is also why in the civil rights movement, the Jews were the ones that walked side by side with the blacks to fight for their rights, because they know. And now the Black community isn't embracing us and saying we stand with you the way you stood with us. Jews died for their cause. Where's the history lesson in that? Who's teaching these kids? Because the fact that the entire Black community isn't standing with us, to me, says either they just don't know, or they've been brainwashed to hate Jews. But when you've been marginalized so much as a community, the way I feel we have, isn't that when you step up?
I think I think you're right. I think the brainwashing is that there's this narrative that's been created that Jews are the oppressor, Jews are genocidal,
When have we ever oppressed? Ever? You can use the argument for Israel. The UN. I mean, here's what kills me, is that these kids are calling and choose colonialists. If you're gonna go with that argument, kids, then get the fuck out of America.
Right.
Because you were not here first.
Right.
Native Americans were here, and you owe them a big fucking apology and move the fuck out.
Yeah, we're the biggest occupier of all. And to your early point, the Jews in Israel are indigenous people. Like, but you see, that's a history lesson. And, it's much easier to just walk around a college campus with a sign and chant something than to actually know what the hell you're talking about. And that gets us back to the issue of education.
So do you notice how they have this little bonding moment where they exaggerate and bring up crazy scenarios about Hitler and other crazy nonsense, and then out of left field they just start talking about us again. They just start talking about, oh, the blacks need to be taught this and that, they're brainwashed. And then a little show host, the guy that's running this little podcast propaganda arm, he just like, yeah, blacks, yeah, yeah, I agree, I concur. Yeah, they're brainwashed. Tell us more, Julianna, about them evil black people. And talking about the subject of a lack of education, just check out how she speaks and the type of timeline and just her lack of education. She talks about how Hitler, was looking at the US's treatment of melanated people during Jim Crow. Then she started mentioning that Hitler saw how they were treating the slaves, but she doesn't realize that she's putting the cart before the horse. And really, let's just bring it out, man. Slavery, then Jim Crow, then the civil rights movement. So I mean, she comes across as dumb, just straight dumb right now. Stupid, hypocritical, and the host too for not calling it. And you know what, boy, maybe neither one of them knew. So, but they beating us over the head with, come on, man. So they are doing nothing but talking trash, but let's bring some information, some true facts to the conversation here. So you can see that New York Times article, Monday, September 21st, 1964. And what does it say right there? It says, poll shows whites in city resent civil rights drive. Majority queried in Times survey say Negro movement has gone too far, but few intend to change votes. Now, when we look at this, let's look at the first part right here. And you can see the full thing right here. It says, with a full title. It says, of course, most white New Yorkers queried in poll says rights drive has gone too far. So what are we going to examine first? Well, we're going to go over, so we're going to check out the replies by religion. And as you can see, it says among Protestants, for example, 31%, but it's not about Protestants. It's about, okay, let's drop down here. Among Jews, 28% said right to place, 17% said more speed, and 46% said slow down that movement. 9% they were unsure. So I mean, it's talking about the speed of the movement. So yeah, 28% thought that the pace was appropriate. 17% they thought that it could be a little bit faster, but 46% they were like, slow this movement down, man. And 9% they were unsure. So underneath that just good advice subheading right there, you see it tell you that of the total 108 people were Roman Catholic, 57 were Jewish, okay, so 26 were Protestant and 8 were whatever. But that's the number you have to check out right there. 57 were Jewish people. So now we're going to go into afraid to walk the streets right there. So what's the what's the takeaway for this right here? Well, if you drop down, okay, it says a retired Jewish businessman who interrupted a study of the racing sheets to answer the questions said that many neighborhoods had always been known as tough. Okay, now this is his words right here, but they were white, tough neighborhoods, if you know what I mean, he added. It was tough up to a point and no more. Now, with the colored, it's a different kind of toughness. It's fear, I guess. Okay, so then that's no different than what this other person from Flushing, Queens, the young middle class mother, said. She said that Negroes should have equal rights, but I wouldn't want my children playing with them and marrying them. They degrade a neighborhood and it never stays just one or two Negro families. White people panic and move out. Ghettos form. Now, we don't know what ethnicity or religion or whatever she is, but it's no different than what the Jewish person said. So that's some context right there. Now let's go on to the next few know many Negroes, and then let's see what the takeaway is for that part right there. Okay. Anyway, the main thing we want to read is where is it at? Okay, these people talking about this was explained, many of them said, by the fact that their neighborhoods were not integrated. Okay, we all live in ghettos, not just the Negroes, said an elderly retired shopkeeper as he sipped coffee in a breezy apartment near Brighton Beach. This is a Jewish ghetto. I'm not complaining, but it's a fact that New York is nothing but a series of ghettos. And then it was like almost 70% said they knew Negroes by name, but the majority of these knew Negroes only through their work or business. So that's the takeaway right there. And you know, he was kind of like, whatever, man. You know, most of New York is ghettos anyway. So what's the big deal? Okay, now let's go on to the next. Depth of backlash probed. And the other key question, the depth of the possible backlash was probed. The respondents were asked, do you feel you're more strongly in favor of what Negroes want than you were a couple of months ago? Or are you more opposed to Negro aims? Or do you feel pretty much the way you did a couple of months ago? 60% or 63% said they felt pretty much the same, while 27% said they had become more opposed. 6% said they more strongly favored what Negroes want, and 4% did not answer. A further analysis of the replies of the 63% in the same category showed that for most of them, same meant a general skepticism of the equality of right or the quality of rights movement. Those who the key questions showed to be critical of the movement were found in other answers to represent all segments of the sample. There were relatively small differences between men and women, among various economic groups, among followers of different religious faiths, and among persons of varying national origins right there. So let's keep in mind that these folks, they're no different than other white people. Keep in mind, this article is entitled Most White New Yorkers Queried in Poll Say Rights Drive Has Gone Too Far. And then you remember what the other Jewish guy said, man, about the tough neighborhoods. You know, he was like, hey, our neighborhoods were always tough, but it's a different kind of tough. You know, we were talking about white tough. These people right here is more fear and everything. So, I mean, Julianna Margulies, she's from New York, right? She's from the metro area, right? So, she's about that age, give or take a couple of years. See, she could definitely be a daughter of one of these apathetic to perhaps virulent Jewish people that was in the New York area back then. So the type of stuff that she's trying to tell us and sell to us about, we did this for you back in your days of, really you didn't. The civil rights movement wasn't our only time of trouble, so you got to think about of course, slavery, then what else? Reconstruction, then Jim Crow, then the civil rights movement, then the type of stuff that we have today. Thing is, the plight of our people, that's more harsh, way more radical than what Margulies' people have historically been through, to be perfectly honest. So it's kind of funny when Margulies say, how dare you people, you're not standing by us the way we stood with you. Actually, we are. We are standing with you guys the way you stood with us. We have a few that's gonna support your cause over their own people foolishly, but we have to get our stuff together and be in a position of strength before we even try to help other people out. That's honestly the truth right there. That's the truth of the matter. So you guys support your own cause and let us support our own. To sum everything up, Margulies and her people, they have to support their own cause. Us over here, we have to support our own cause. Do things for our best interest, stretching ourselves thin to aid and represent these people, many different groups of people who really trying to pimp us out, just like the people of Julianna, Margulies, and this person running this podcast here. It's best to just fend for ourselves. If we have any mutual interest, well, we have to mutually benefit from it. But this lady's talking crazy over here. So to sum it up, support your own cause. Margulies, don't expect us. Don't try to pimp us out anymore. And our people, we have to realize when we are being pimped out, we have to have some unity, because if we're not unified, then we're weak. We're in a low position. Let's get out of this thing. So that's part 1. Part 2 of this Zionistic Agitprop will come soon or later. All right, guys, take care.